Bless the Lord, my brothers and sisters. I'm back here again, reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verses 8 through to 24. The last time I was with you guys, I read from verses 1 through to 7, and the topic was Do Not Be Deceived. No, this is part 2, Do Not Be Deceived, part 2. Right here, I'm going to be reading from verse 8, sorry. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. Right here in verse 8, God had already knew that they had sinned. So there was nothing much that God could have done. Instead, he allowed them to finish doing what they were doing, and after he decided to pay them a little visit. The reason why I said is since because they had already disobeyed him already, there was nothing much he could do. He wanted for them to see their own sin, their own mistake that they had done, and have caused to come upon themselves. He wanted them to think for themselves. He wanted them to make the right choice, to choose the right path, but instead they chose the wrong path, which resulted in severe consequences. Okay. In verse 9 it says, And the Lord God called unto Adam and said unto him, Where art thou? Verse 10. And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Right here, Adam's spirit came in contact with the presence of God, which later caused him to become afraid of God and what God had to say to him. It brought fear upon his life. Verse 11. And he said, Who told thee that thou was naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat? Verse 12. And the man said, The woman whom thou gavest to me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Adam, here in verse 11 to 12, upon recognizing the fear of God, sought to use his newly found intelligence on God by trying to throw out all the blame on Eve, even though it was true. It was really Eve who gave him the apple to eat. Verse 13. And the Lord God said unto the woman, What is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Eve in verse 13 also used her newly found intelligence to blame the serpent, even though they were both wrong to accept the serpent offers. They had a choice to make, but they chose the wrong choice, which in the end resulted in severe consequences. Verse 14. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and thou shalt thou eat all the days of your life. All the days of your life. Bless the Lord, bless the Lord, bless the Lord. Right here in verse 14, but I'm gonna explain something to you. Back then, the devil was in heaven, right? And he being in heaven, he got full of himself. He started to become greedy. He started to become jealous. So upon seeing this, God had to kick him out of heaven. And in the process of kicking him out of heaven, he sought revenge. He was in a total turmoil. He's like he was losing it. So he was waiting for the right opportunity, and this here was the right opportunity when God made Adam and Eve. He sought to deceive them by going to them and befriending them, and later deceiving them into the trap which he, wanted them to go into. So, right here, God had to curse him. When he came down from heaven, he was loose. There was no leash on him. He could go about free, do as he liked. But right here, after deceiving both Adam and Eve, God had to put a leash on him. The leash that God put on him was to curse him, was to bound him, was to give us the authority through Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ came on earth, died for her sins, God gave us the authority to trample the devil, to put him under our feet, to not allow him to have the upper hand over us like he did back then. Because like I said, back then he was just thrown out of heaven. He was loose. There was no leash on him, so God had to put a leash after he had deceived Adam and Eve. Okay, verse 15 here. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Unto the woman, bless the Lord, he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And Adam, he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. Verse 19. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the dust. For out of it was thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Verse 15 to 19 here we see was the beginning of sorrows for Adam and Eve, which the serpent didn't tell them. The serpent only told them of the sweet fruit, and it will allow them to see good, brighter things, and it will make them gods and so forth. But he did not mention that they would have faced severe consequences. Why? Because he was the devil. That was his motto. That was his thing. He didn't want them to realize that he was the bad guy. He had to befriend them and tell them all the sweet stuff, but he didn't tell them what would come after. Right here we see where the beginning of sorrows would be, and the painful consequence that the price of sinning against God would come upon them. Bless the Lord, bless the Lord. When Adam, this is show that the woman would have had, in verse 15 it said, God, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Right here, God showed them that in their relationship, in their homes, there will be turmoil, there will be ups and downs, there will be a little tug and war. Why? Because of the consequences, because of the sin, because of the disobedience. That's why that would have come upon them. Down in the chapter, it mentioned that Adam had to work real hard. He had to work real hard to provide for his family. He had to till the ground, and when tilling the ground also would have faced some thorns, some thistles, some stuff would have come upon him that wouldn't have come upon him if he just had obeyed God. So right here, these were the beginning of sorrow. She would have also, the woman Eve, when they were bringing forth child, she would face pain. She would be in great pain, great sorrows, and also God allowed Adam to become ruler of the household. He would be the head of all things. So really and truly here, verse 15 to 19, it shows us the consequences, what would take place when we sin against God. This is what God mentioned to them, that he didn't want that to happen. He wanted, for them to have a good life, for them, to be able to have peace. But that's not what they wanted. That's not what, bless the Lord. That's not what, this is not what they should have been into. This is not what should have come upon them. They should have had more peace, more calm. Things wouldn't have been so rough. But like I said, because of disobedience, that's why.